Our number 2 is the Boys of Summer with Joel Caine and Michael Carayannis through SEN 1170 in Sydney, 693 SENQ in Bris Vegas, and of course on the SEN app. Speaking about Bris Vegas, Corey Parker joins Ian Healy for breakfast starting January 20. So, Cozza, you've got a week left before your alarm clock starts to fire off, and good luck with that too. I think you'll do terrifically well with Ian Healy on SENQ. Vossy and Brandy, of course, return for Sydney breakfast February 10. On SEN 1170 and through your podcast and the SEN app. Bryden's lawyers need expert legal advice. That's what we do. This morning we'll have Brett Phillips to give us an update on the Australian Open. We might even ask him for a cheeky roughie, a few cheeky roughies as far as who can win the Australian Open. That's after 8 a.m. I've got an observation for tennis, which I'll run past Mick very, very shortly. But
we should have an observation count for you, Joel.
Yeah, I know. Well, I do have another observation for you, Mick, and it was page 32 of the Sunday Telegraph, the Sunday Sesh, and the big headline, thinking about it can eat you up. This is David Clemmer talking about player options, club options, mutual agreements, and you've got a 2-page spread talking about player contracts. Give us the bullet points here. I thought it was a fascinating read.
Yeah, because I was surprised. I got hold of a document that goes to clubs which details everyone's contract status, essentially. And I was surprised to learn that there's more than 50 players that have options. And the options are a weird and wonderful thing. They all work in different ways. There's 3 kinds. You've got the player option, which is self-explanatory. It's up to the player. You've got the club option, which is the club can decide. Then you've got the mutual option. And the mutual options they're weird and wonderful mutual options because they all work in different ways. Some of them could be as simple as, okay, Joel, you want me?
Yep.
I want it, but I also want to stay. So tick, tick, I stay, right? But there's other ones, like you've got David Clemmer, who's got, and Christian Walsh, both have mutual options for the 2026 season, but they need to play a certain amount of games to activate that contract. For Clemmer, he's got to play 14 games at the West Tigers for it to go through, and Christian Walsh has to play at least 18 games to earn a contract for 2026, and that becomes obviously, problematic at times because we've seen it in the past where Kirk Reynoldsson was the prime example going all those years back where he had, a $350,000 offer, which is big money back then, playing for the Newcastle Knights. The coach at the time, Brian Smith, dropped him 1 game short of activating that trigger for the next season, so he didn't end up getting his money. So that's crazy, right? Justin Olam had a clause in his contract for next season that if PNG came into the competition in 2026, he could get out.
So that's not there anymore, is it?
That's not there, so that's been removed because it was only for the 26th season, and obviously he's not going to be there in 2026. And there's some clubs that announced deals, like the Dragons announced Jaden Sewer as a 2-year contract.
Yep.
It's a 2-year contract, straight up contract, plus an option his way for the 3rd year.
Wow.
That wasn't public.
The just going back to the Clemmer thing, so he's got to play 14 games.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Reynoldsson. There was a situation, and whilst this wasn't a contract as far as extension, if you follow the NFL, Jerry Jones got criticised.
Yes.
He's the boss of...
the owner.
He's the owner of the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And Cooper Rush had been playing quarterback.
Yeah.
And by all intents and purposes should have been playing in this game. But he needed one more game to get $3 million or whatever the bonus was.
Because their contracts are super incentive-based. It's crazy how individual-based those contracts are.
Yes.
Because it would be like in the NRL.
Stats. Like you wouldn't have Dylan Edwards to run X many metres.
Yes. Or whatever the case may be. Or try. It's crazy, right? Like Mike Evans had to go 1,000 yards or whatever the case may be for a $3 million bonus. And they did it in one of the last drives of the game.
But the club... the team, they actually got around him to help him do it.
Yes, they helped.
Whereas
the Cowboys on the flip side have cost Cooper Rush that paycheck because they played Trey Lance, who hasn't been able to play at all, right? So the way the NFL do it is fraught with danger. I don't think that would work in Australia.
No.
How individualised and how selfish in a way those clauses based are. So there's none like that in the NRL, right? There's, the Raiders have an interesting one with Jamal Fogarty. Right, so if they take up, they can take up his contract. They have until round 6 to let him know if they want to keep him on a significant deal. Right. It's a high end, starting halfback contract. Right, if they say no, well, Jamal can test the market. Then has up until round 20.
Right.
To tell the Raiders if they want him to, if he wants to stay on a significantly reduced rate. So it's a bit of a safety net for Jamal. If things aren't working out, well, he's still got 12 months in his kit.
Gotcha.
Right? At a reduced rate. But,
Yep.
they can renegotiate the deals or whatever the case may be. So they're weird. They're wonderful. But you mentioned 3 clubs in the NRL that do not have an option in their players' contract in terms of their top 30. The Bulldogs,
Yep.
the Roosters, and the Panthers.
Right.
And the Panthers I found really intriguing. I spoke to their CEO of Rugby League, Matt Cameron, and a couple of years ago during their Premiership run, that the board had a meeting and ratified the fact that there will be no player options in contracts.
Yep.
They're not allowed.
No.
So if a manager comes to them and says, no, the board has said, no, we're not putting any options in contracts in terms of mutual options and player options. They'll put a club option in because they still control that.
That's right.
Destiny.
What can you lose? Yeah.
And then you can plan and have that situation arise. But they've got an actual club policy mandated that they're not allowed to put options into contracts.
Well, you can bet your bottom dollar the moment you publish this article, page 32 of the Sunday Telegraph, you watch how many clubs follow suit and get rid of the player option, which makes sense because, Mick, in most cases, if a player is taking up the option, why are they taking it up? Because it's probably a favourable deal for them.
Yep.
So most times and we won't have a report on this, but if you went through all player options taken up, their market value would be materially less than what they took up for the option. Is that fair to say?
Generally speaking, yes.
So that's why great clubs like the Panthers, it's just very good practice to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes it impossible to plan. You look at Parramatta's situation where they've got Dylan Brown.
Take
Mitch
us through
Moses.
the Dylan Brown one.
So Dylan Brown, right? He's got an option by round 10, I think it is. He needs to tell Parramatta if he'll be at the club in 26-27.
Right.
Okay.
By round 10.
Round 10.
Right.
Okay. 26-27.
Okay.
Will he remain? And then again, he has another. I think it's in 26 or 27 again. So 26-27 by round 10, he needs to tell Parramatta if he's staying. Okay. Then he has the opportunity to stay until 2031. So there's another option there as well.
Right. Wow. That's heavy.
And it makes it impossible to plan. You look at Penrith's roster. They've planned up until 2029 or whatever the case may be. How can Parramatta plan if they don't know if Mitch Moses and Dylan Brown are going to be there? In terms of the ramifications for the rest of your squad, it makes it extremely difficult. I think you can carry one player, I think.
Yep.
I reckon. But you can't carry, your highest paid players, 2 of your highest paid players and options.
I've joked with this, but I kind of think that in a salary cap world, it is so abundantly clear that it doesn't matter. The crap teams are still crap. The best coaches are still winning the comps. If you truly, and this would never happen, but if you truly wanted to make equality in the competition, you would include the coach's salary in the salary cap. Their influence, it'll never happen. But I'm just saying that we're giving people the same salary cap, yet the same coaches and the best teams keep winning the comps. It's the coach. The coach can be almost the biggest edge. Whether you've got a Bellamy there for $2 million or you've got a brand new coach for 400, that is a significant. That's the biggest advantage you can get in the game.
Yeah, and we've seen the coaches that have won the comps.
I'm just saying, if you truly, it'll never happen. But if you wanted equality,
have a coach draft.
You would have to have the coach in the cap if you truly wanted it to be.
There is
equality.
a football cap.
There's a soft cap.
There is a football cap. Right?
There is a soft cap. Exactly right. Anyway, what do you think, folks? 1300 01 1170.
And if we look at some of the players that Parramatta have 7 players with options. Right?
Yeah.
The Storm have 6, Raiders have 6, Knights have 5, Tigers have 5, and obviously Jerome Luai's got that clause as well, where he's only committed 2 years for the West Tigers and can roll on for 12 months, year by year. So it is interesting the way clubs use them and agents use them as well. That would be the next one to sit down and break it down of which players have which agent
that's
and
right.
the like,
That's right.
because some do love them.
Yep, that's exactly right. I remember, I'll tell you a little contract I signed years ago, very first year of the West Tigers. So I said, can I get 80 grand? 80 grand. And they said, no. And the manager's saying, well, he was nominated as Rookie of the Year, and sound like Jimmy now.
We'll get you at some point. Don't worry.
But I just wanted 80 grand a year, and they wouldn't give it to me. They said, we'll give you 60 and we'll give you X amount per game.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, I played every game.
Yeah.
So it was in the club's favour. They should have just taken the 80.
Yeah.
So it does work for and against the players. But when I go through this list, it's really, and there's a lot of mutual agreements, Mick, right?
Yeah.
Mutual agreement does not mean, well, not in every case, that
They're all different.
that we've got to agree, does it?
They're all different. Because generally the way they work, so Clemmer and Welsh are listed as mutual agreements, right? But they're triggered based.
Yes.
Okay, the way it generally works is that the club can take it up at X amount, right? Usually at a high value.
Yep.
And if that doesn't work out, then the player, a week later, or whatever the case may be, can take it up at a lesser amount.
Yes.
So Jacob Little's got a mutual option. That's how it works at the Dragons.
Yes.
Okay, but I mentioned the Fogarty one where it's significant up to round 6 for Canberra.
Yep.
And then round 20 at a lesser value for Fogarty to take it up.
It's a bit like the share market, the call and the puts for those mutual agreements. Very, very interesting. What do you think about your club signings? Well, it's mainly for the following year, I suppose, in many, many cases. 0457 736 736. What about historically? Some of the big, some of the quirky contracts we've seen.
Well, we've saw Kieran Four, and this was a cracker, put a political instability clause. Never heard of it. When he went from Manly to Parramatta.
Yep.
Because there was boardroom dramas. He signed for Brad Arthur, but the coaches were getting spat out over that period. So that was an interesting one. We had Tino and Fafita, obviously at the Titans recently, have a Justin Holbrook clause.
Yeah.
Coach clauses. Stefano's funky clause last year that allowed him to leave the club because he needed the Tigers to play the top 8, or he had to play 2 Origin games.
See, that one, that there is an interesting one because, and you don't wish for players to be thinking this way, but hypothetically, the Tigers had to win their last game to make the finals. That Stefano deal itself. Straight away, I think this way. They have to win this game to make the finals, but Stefano, hypothetically, is dead keen to get out of there. What's his incentive to play well to qualify the Tigers for that game?
Yeah.
That's where some of these
in theory,
clauses.
it made sense, right? Because if the club was going well, then probably he wanted to stay. And if he was shooting the lights out and playing Origin ahead of his time, well, the club got to keep him, right? Because it was 2 Origin games, he played 1.
That's right.
And now, obviously, he's joined Melbourne. Callum Pong had a few get-out clauses. Jonah Pezzett has just done a new deal at Melbourne. That's got a Jerome Hughes clause.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, essentially, if Jerome Hughes re-signs, Jonah can get out of there.
Which, when I say it's unbelievable, that's not the worst.
It's smart from both parties, that one.
Smart from both parties because you're paying money there to keep them behind someone. You're double paying.
Yeah.
It's good.
And, they've got a guy there that hasn't chased the big money to go elsewhere because he wants to stay at the club. It's obvious he wants to stay at the club because he could have been a starting halfback at a lot of clubs. And they've got the succession plan locked in behind Jerome, right? So, but if Jerome extends, then you got to do the right thing by the kid as well, who's shown loyalty to your club. So I actually don't mind that clause. I think it works. You know what? It's a adult clause in terms of the fact that they've shown respect to each other.
They have.
We can all knock clauses, and some of them here are crazy.
Yep.
I think that one is a real grown-up clause from all parties involved.
Have they not got the same clause for Pap and what's the situation there?
It's an informal one.
Right.
With Failonga.
Failonga. How does that play out? How do you think that plays out?
Well, I think the 12-month deal for Paps was interesting because it sort of shows from both parties they're not 100% convinced. Like, he could have chased more money and gone elsewhere, Paps, but, he's shown loyalty to the Storm as well, and they've got Failonga there who's a freak as well. So that's a real interesting one. But look at Melbourne. You were talking about the reason they've got great success. Well, they've already got, if they need to, they've got a fullback.
Yep.
If they need to, they've got a halfback ready to go.
Yep.
What clubs have that?
That's right. Premiership favouritism is the way of the Melbourne Storm. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, probably.
So the market's got them about a 27% chance to win. Penrith about a 22% chance. Fascinating. Fascinating to see how that plays out. G'day, Shaggers. Sugar, you're spot on about the coach. That's why no matter how many great players the Tigers get, we'll finish at the bottom. Benji's not a coach. Okay, that's what he's saying now. Well, I'll tell you what. He said he's an Instagram coach. This is what he's saying, the reptile. I don't think Benji'd be bothered by that, but he does need a big year, Benji. What's the pass mark? So where do the Tigers, all things being fit and healthy, where do they need to run for people to believe in Benji?
12th? I think it's a good year.
12's a good year.
I think 12th's a good year.
Yep. Okay.
And I think Shane Richards has put the pump on Benji by calling it the best spine.
Yep.
and I know he's got a long-term contract, but he obviously does need to deliver and show improvement, right? They need to, if they're bottom two, then Benji's in all sorts.